What is up, guys? I am Dr. Jude. Welcome back to my video. Today we're going to talk about something that has been all over the headlines and there's no getting away from it, so let's just jump into it and break it down. So where are all the doctors and nurses going? My name is Dr. Jude. I am now a consultant orthopedic surgeon, but I spent 5 years at medical school, followed by 10 years working as a junior doctor, and then 2 years working as a fellow. So I have spent a lot of time in hospital. And quick disclaimer, this video is basically based on my opinion from what I have observed over more than a decade. Also, it's based on some reading from online forums to articles from the BMA, the GMC, recent statistics which have been released. Also, a lot of accounts. I have watched a lot of videos from doctors and nurses, probably more than 20, who have recently left, and tried to make notes on their reasoning. So hopefully this video will be valuable to the public to help them make sense of what is going on, and also to any young doctors or nurses or students who might be feeling slightly anxious about the future and maybe about what role they are hopefully going to play within medicine. And I still think that it's a fantastic career. There are problems, and hopefully maybe even the Department of Health or the government will actually listen to what is being said in this video and thousands more like it, and hopefully make those changes.
The waiting room was rammed. I've never seen it like that.
It's like a really horrific board game.
In 2021, 33,000 nurses quit their job, and the exodus of doctors from the NHS was the highest it has ever been. And I don't think we can talk about this without addressing the elephant in the room, and that of course is COVID. It was like a huge reset. It forced us to reflect on our lives and reassess what is important to us. And more than ever, people want meaningful and enjoyable work. Our resilience is at an all-time low. And actually, there is the great resignation which transcends just healthcare. Young people all over the world are readjusting what they do for a living. I think more than ever, doctors want flexibility, and that is something that you don't really get in a career in healthcare. I remember spending years as a junior doctor and having to work grueling rotas, not really wanting to be in hospital, on night shifts, Christmases, birthdays, parents' birthdays, and having to miss several family functions because of my rota. And I just think that now there is much less tolerance to that amount of impact on one's life. I remember being stuck inside in my 30s studying for exams all weekend with very little money, whilst my friends from university were working in banking and enjoying big bonuses, holidays for their family, nice new homes, and you couldn't help but feel that like you were several steps behind. So I think there is a new normal after COVID, and that goodwill, frankly, has run out. Working as a doctor means many early starts, late nights, lots of exams, high pressured work, high stakes. And many doctors are human. It should be rewarding, but it often isn't because of this heightened level of anxiety and stress. And I can tell you, hands down, doctors are worried about making mistakes, worried about what that might mean for their career, what that might mean for the patients. And ultimately, doctors are human, so they can and will make mistakes at some point in their career. And if you combine this with the fact that many doctors and nurses are working in institutions that have a staffing problem, that is no secret. There are thousands of nursing and doctor gaps across the country. And so lots of doctors and nurses are complaining that they feel exposed. They feel that they're more likely to make a mistake. And when you combine this with the litigious nature of healthcare, it becomes a self-perpetuating cycle because they feel exposed because of low staff numbers, and they are then choosing to go and do less pressured work in other industries, which actually then makes the staffing crisis worse. And it's slightly unique working in healthcare when you make a mistake, because you can, and many doctors and nurses have been dragged in social media, in mainstream media, have been even prosecuted and sent to jail, investigated and prevented from working and earning a living whilst the investigation is underway. So it can be very stressful. Mental, physical, emotional burnout is very real in hospital, and I honestly don't think I know a single doctor who would claim not to have experienced this to some degree over the last few years. COVID completely exhausted healthcare workers' emotional and physical reserves, and since then there has really been no opportunity to recover. Whilst it was not perfect or great for anybody, other sectors had the opportunity to work from home or adjust their working arrangements. And so whilst the world stayed home, we went to work. And if you cast your mind back to the level of stress and anxiety at this new novel virus that was killing people, seemingly more aggressive in healthcare workers and minorities, it was worrying.
And I think that when we were raising the alarm bells, especially in the pandemic, especially during a time where not only were we seeing the British public suffer, but we were seeing our own colleagues suffer. We were seeing our own colleagues in ITU beds. We were seeing our own colleagues on ventilators. So I think the fact that if the politicians don't listen to us at such an acute time, when we're in such high levels of distress, I really think it's a shame on British politics.
And whilst they applauded in the streets and people came into their balconies and at their front doors and clapped healthcare workers and created this ethos of the heroic healthcare worker, we certainly didn't feel like that, and there was a complete disconnect from reality. And we feel as though the government has just not really backed up that good nature and that appreciation with action. And since then, it's really been one catastrophe after another, from flu endemics, several new strains and multiple waves of COVID. We've had the cost of living crisis, the Russian-Ukrainian war, Fuelgate, and now of course we're in a recession. And there are several accounts of nurses really struggling to make ends meet and having to eat at food banks. I thought they were heroes. So I think a lot of healthcare workers don't even know that they're burned out. They're just exhausted. They are depleted, they are done, and they are leaving. This one is really difficult to pin down, but I definitely feel as though there has been a change in hospital culture. And this is reflected in the junior doctor training surveys and the NHS staff surveys. Junior doctors feel far disconnected from senior doctors. Frontline clinical staff feel that policymakers and management have no idea what it's like. And because of the structure of shift work, it's much more difficult to build that bond as a team. And this is quite difficult for me to discuss, to be honest, but if you look at the rates of harassment, bullying, racism, claims of block to career progression based on prejudice, it is not getting any lower, and there isn't a trust in the entire country that doesn't have its own fair share of issues. I'm not claiming to have the answers, I'm just telling you what it is. Lots of hospitals have created anti-bullying campaigns. There have been lots of stamp out racism projects, but the results are still pretty poor. We need to do something about that. Anyways, I remember being an FY1 doctor, which is sort of like being an intern on a busy surgical rotation. And that meant lots of late nights, which wasn't paid for. It meant coming in early, it meant high pressured work. But I remember in general, I did enjoy it because I knew that I wanted to be a surgeon. And actually, some of my fondest memories were like Christmas parties or Friday night beers with my team. And it was an opportunity to connect with senior doctors and consultants who I didn't necessarily know were normal people and human, but you have a beer with these guys and they let their hair down and you realize, you know what, they're pretty cool. These are pretty cool people. And actually, one day I might be a surgeon. And now that I am the consultant, I think it's really important that we are seen to be human and we are able to talk to the juniors and they feel open to come and speak to us at any opportunity. And so that's how I do it. Training is long, it's expensive, it's difficult. And without connecting with and inspiring the next generation of doctor, they're going to keep dropping out. And many of them are realizing that actually there is no pot of gold at the end. There's just more work and more stress. Traditionally, in British history, being a doctor was noble work. In previous eras, we were defined by our profession and had intrinsic value linked to this. If you went into a bank and said you were a surgeon, you'd be greeted with a hearty warm shake by the manager and you'd be treated well. But let's be honest, today, nobody cares. With 18-year-old footballers earning in one day what a British NHS surgeon earns in 1 year, times have changed. We live in a more consumerist, capitalist culture. People work so that they can go on nice holidays, buy nice things, and have tech that makes them happy. And there are a lot easier ways than becoming a surgeon to do that. And so the other elephant in the room is pay. And it's no secret, it's poor. Doctors and nurses have been subjected to minuscule pay rises and almost a decade of pay freezing, which the government called austerity. But whatever you want to call it, current pay does not reflect the level of training, the skill and expertise, the risks, and of course the impact that current healthcare professionals make every single day. And over this time, the British Medical Association and the Royal College of Nursing have estimated a pay cut of more than 30%. So it's not surprising that many doctors and nurses are leaving for higher paid work elsewhere. Some are staying within healthcare, but going to other countries. I know several doctors who are doing this. Not just junior doctors actually, lots of consultants as well. And over the last 5 years, I know doctors who have gone to the US, Canada, back to India, the Middle East, the Caribbean, Australia, New Zealand, Nigeria, you name it, doctors are migrating. There is definitely an exodus to greener pastures. And of course, we are now living in a digital entrepreneurship revolution. And doctors and nurses are very bright, very intelligent people. And so unsurprisingly, they are going it alone, building businesses that are making them lots more money than they would have made as junior doctors, or they're actually taking up work in medtech, in management consultancy, and almost overnight doubling or tripling their salaries. So unsurprisingly, the nurses have recently voted to strike, and I'm pretty sure the junior doctors will be after that, and I would not be surprised if the consultants were after that, which would be unprecedented, but not surprising, but very sad, because going through dozens and dozens of accounts of doctors and nurses who have left the NHS, one of the commonest themes that I'm seeing is that they did not feel supported or able to provide the level and quality of care that they had set out wanting to when they embarked on this career. And for that reason, they decided to leave. And so if we do not address this quickly, healthcare in the UK is going to look very different over the next 10 years, and not in a good way. Of course, we are recruiting from overseas, but actually even now, many overseas doctors and nurses are actually quitting as well and leaving. So that isn't even the answer. I think we need to find ways to keep doctors and nurses within the system. There is actually a silver lining. Well, at least I think so. And that is, now is a good time to be a young surgeon, because we have an opportunity to innovate. We have an opportunity to bring in change, to introduce new ways of working, to reshape our NHS for the future, to renegotiate pay structures, to create a system that works for people and is brought up to date to modern times. I think it's quite exciting to be starting out as a consultant, and if you are a junior doctor coming through, personally, I think now is a time that we can actually leave a positive legacy on the NHS. Otherwise, we're going to lose it. So I'll leave you with one of my favorite quotes, and that is, a pessimist sees difficulty in every opportunity, but an optimist sees opportunity in every difficulty. So be an optimist. Peace.